was too busy chasing money and success that I forgot the one person who sat on a wooden bench every single day, waiting for me. But one day, the bench was empty. This is not just a story. It's a lesson that I learned too late. If you love your parents, this story will change how you look at them. Listen carefully to every word, not just to improve your English, but to understand the value of time before it's gone.
I still remember the old wooden bench outside our small house. Every evening, no matter the weather, my father sat there and waited for me. He wore his faded blue shirt, held a cup of tea, and looked down the road with hopeful eyes. I was a busy young man then. I worked in the city, chasing dreams, money, and success. I always told myself that I was doing it for my family. But deep inside, I knew I was slowly drifting away from them. My father never complained. He simply waited. Every Friday, I promised him, "Dad, I'll come home early this week." And every Friday, I was late. Sometimes I didn't come at all. Still, the next Friday, he would be there again, sitting on that bench, watching the road. Maybe today, he would whisper to my mother. Years passed. My career grew. My salary increased. I bought a nice apartment and an expensive car. But somehow, my visits home became shorter and less frequent. One rainy evening, my mother called. Her voice was trembling. "Your father has been waiting for you since afternoon," she said. "He said you promised to come." I glanced at the clock. I was in the middle of an important meeting. "Tell him I'll come next week," I replied. There was silence. Then she softly said, "All right." I didn't know that those words would haunt me forever. The next morning, my phone rang at 5 a.m. It was my mother. This time, she was crying, "Your father. He passed away last night." The world stopped. I couldn't breathe. I drove home faster than I ever had before. Rain poured heavily, blurring the road ahead. When I arrived, the bench was still there. Wet, empty, silent. My mother handed me a small notebook. "He wrote in this every Friday while waiting for you," she said. With trembling hands, I opened it. The first page read, "Today, my son said he would come. I made his favourite tea." The second page, "He must be busy. Maybe next week." In another page, I saw a car slowing down. My heart raced. But it wasn't him. Tears filled my eyes. Page after page, year after year, he had written about waiting for me. His hopes, his excitement, his disappointment, but never anger, never blame. On the final page, written in shaky handwriting, were these words: "I think my time is near. If my son reads this, tell him I was never lonely." Waiting for him was the happiest part of my week. Broke down. For the first time in years, I cried like a child. At his funeral, I stood beside the bench. I placed my hand on the worn wood where he had sat so many times. I realized something important. Success means nothing if you have no one to share it with. Money can buy comfort, but it cannot buy back lost time. Now, every Friday evening, I sit on that same bench. I hold a cup of tea. I look down the road, not because I'm waiting for someone, but because it reminds me of a man whose love never gave up on me. A man who waited. A man who forgave. A man who loved me unconditionally.
My father. And every time the sun begins to set, I whisper into the evening air, "I'm home, Dad." Sometimes the wind feels warmer, as if he is sitting beside me, still waiting, still smiling, still loving. The first Friday after my father's funeral was the hardest. I sat alone on the old bench, holding 2 cups of tea, one for me, one for him. The evening breeze moved gently through the trees, carrying the familiar scent of jasmine from my mother's garden. For the first time in years, I noticed how beautiful home really was. I had spent so much of my life chasing bigger things that I had forgotten the value of small moments. A warm cup of tea, a quiet sunset, a father's silent love. My mother came outside and sat beside me. Neither of us spoke for a while. Sometimes silence says more than words ever can. Finally, she smiled softly. "Your father always knew you would come back." I stared at the empty road ahead, but I came too late. She placed her hand over mine. "No," she said gently. "You came home." That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my father's notebook again. Tucked inside the back cover was an envelope with my name written on it. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter. "My dear son, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer sitting on the bench. First, don't cry for me. I have lived a full and happy life. I know you always wanted to make me proud. But son, I was proud of you the day you were born. I was proud when you took your first step. I was proud when you went to school. And I was proud every single day after that. You never had to earn my love. It was always yours. Life will keep pulling you in many directions. Work hard, dream big, but never forget where your heart belongs. Visit your mother often. Sit on this bench sometimes. And when you have children of your own, wait for them the way I waited for you. Love them without conditions. Forgive them without hesitation. That is what fathers do. I will always be with you. Love, Dad." I read that letter 100 times. Each word felt like a warm embrace. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. I started visiting my mother every weekend. We cooked together. We laughed. We shared stories about my father. For the first time in a long while, the house felt alive again. One evening, while cleaning the attic, I found an old box. Inside were dozens of things my father had kept over the years. My first school drawing, my childhood trophies, even the broken toy car I had cried over when I was 6. He had saved everything, every memory, every piece of my life. I realized that while I had been busy building my future, my father had been carefully preserving my past. A year later, my wife and I welcomed our first child into the world, a baby boy. As I held him in my arms, tears filled my eyes. For the first time, I truly understood my father's love. It was endless. It was patient. It was unconditional. We named him after his grandfather.
Every Friday evening, I now sit on the same bench, with my son on my lap. I tell him stories about the grandfather he never met, how he loved deeply, how he waited faithfully, how he taught me the true meaning of family. Sometimes, my son points to the sky and asks, "Is Grandpa watching us?" I smile and kiss his forehead. "Yes," I say. He never misses a Friday. And somehow, in those quiet moments, I can almost hear my father's gentle laugh carried by the wind. Life moves on. It always does. But love never leaves. It stays in old benches, handwritten letters, and family traditions. It lives in the lessons we pass down. It echoes in the words we speak. And every Friday, as the sun sets and the tea grows cold, I look down that familiar road and whisper, "Thank you for waiting for me, Dad." Because even though he is gone, his love still guides me home. Years passed, but Friday evenings never changed. No matter how busy life became, I always returned home before sunset. My son would run ahead of me, laughing as he raced toward the old wooden bench. "Grandpa's bench," he would shout, and every single time, my heart would smile. My mother loved those evenings. She would bring us tea and homemade cookies, just like she had done for my father and me so many years ago. The house, once heavy with loss, was now filled with laughter again. One Friday, when my son was 7, He asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Dad, why did Grandpa always wait for you?" I looked at the fading orange sky. "Because he loved me." "But you were late a lot, right?" I laughed softly. "Very late." "Then why didn't he get angry?" I thought for a moment. Real love doesn't keep score. My son sat quietly, absorbing every word. That night, after he had fallen asleep, I opened my father's notebook once more. The pages had grown worn over the years, but his handwriting still felt alive. I noticed something I had missed before. Tucked between 2 pages was a small photograph. It was an old picture of my father and me. I couldn't have been more than 5 years old. I was sitting on his shoulders, both of us laughing. On the back, he had written, "The happiest day of my life was not when I succeeded, but when I became his father." I pressed the photo against my chest. Some treasures cannot be measured. A few months later, my mother became ill. Age had finally begun to catch up with her. I spent every possible moment by her side. One evening, as we sat together on the porch, she held my hand. "Your father would be proud of the man you've become." I smiled through my tears. "I learned from the best." She nodded. "He never stopped believing in you, even when you stopped believing in yourself." Those words stayed with me. After she passed away peacefully, the following spring, the house felt empty again. But this time, it wasn't loneliness. It was peace. A peaceful kind of silence, filled with beautiful memories. I inherited the old house. Many people advised me to sell it. The city was far. The maintenance was expensive. But some places are worth more than money. So I kept it. It became our family's gathering place. Every holiday, every birthday, every important moment happened there. And always, the bench remained exactly where it had always been. Weathered, strong, faithful, just like my father. When my son turned 18, I gave him my father's notebook. He read it in complete silence. When he finished, tears rolled down his cheeks. "He really loved you." "Yes," I said. "He loves you too." That evening, the 3 generations seemed to meet in one place. My father in memory, me in gratitude, my son in understanding. Years later, when my hair had turned gray and my steps had slowed, my son came to visit one Friday. He was now a successful man with a family of his own. His little daughter ran straight to the bench. "Great-grandpa's bench?" she yelled. I laughed. The tradition had survived. As the sun dipped below the horizon, my son handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter. His handwriting was shaky, just like mine had once been. "Dad, thank you for always being there. Thank you for teaching me that love is spelled T-E-M-I. Grandpa waited for you. You waited for me. And one day, I will wait for my children too. That is how love lives forever." I couldn't speak. Some tears are too sacred for words. That night, sitting beneath the stars, I looked up and whispered, "Did you see that, Dad?" The breeze moved softly through the trees, and in that gentle wind, I felt his answer. He had waited for me. I had learned from him, and now, the love he gave had become a legacy. A legacy of patience, a legacy of forgiveness, a legacy of showing up every Friday, no matter what. Because in the end, the greatest gift we can offer the people we love is not money, advice, or possessions. It is our presence. It is our time. And sometimes, it is simply waiting. So, if someone you love is expecting you today, don't be late. Because one day, you may find yourself sitting on an old wooden bench, wishing for just one more Friday.
She looked at her wedding ring for a long moment. It was the only thing she had left from her husband. The last memory. The last promise. The last piece of a love that death could never erase. But tonight, her little boy was burning with fever. His tiny hands trembled. His breathing grew weaker with every passing minute. The doctor said he needed medicine immediately. She checked her pockets. Nothing. Not a single coin. Tears filled her eyes as she held her son close. Then, without another thought, she slipped off her ring. The ring her husband had placed on her finger with trembling hands years ago. And in that moment, she made a choice every mother would understand. Some memories are precious, but a child's life is priceless. Emily sat quietly beside the small wooden bed, gently placing a cool cloth on her son's burning forehead. 7-year-old Noah had always been full of life, his laughter filling every corner of their tiny apartment. But tonight, his cheerful eyes were half closed, and his weak body trembled beneath the thin blanket. "Mom," Noah whispered, his voice barely audible. "It hurts." Emily forced a smile, though her heart was breaking. She brushed his soft brown hair away from his forehead and kissed him gently. I know, sweetheart. Mommy is here. The doctor at the neighborhood clinic had been clear. Noah needed medicine immediately. Without it, his condition could become dangerous. Emily reached into her purse for the third time, even though she already knew it was empty. A few crumpled receipts, an old grocery list. Nothing else, not a single dollar. Her rent was overdue. The electricity bill sat unopened on the kitchen table. She had spent her last cent buying Noah's soup just 2 days earlier. Panic wrapped around her chest like a tight rope. She looked around the room, searching for anything valuable. There was nothing. Except one thing. Her hand slowly moved to the ring on her finger. A simple gold band, worn smooth by time. Her wedding ring. It had been 10 years since Daniel slipped it onto her finger, his hands shaking with excitement and love. She could still hear his voice. No matter what happens, this ring will always remind you that you're never alone. Daniel had died in a car accident 3 years earlier, leaving Emily to raise Noah by herself. The ring was all she had left. Her last connection to the man she had loved with all her heart. Emily stared at it, tears filling her eyes. Noah coughed weakly. That sound shattered every hesitation. Without another thought, she slipped the ring off her finger. "Stay here, baby," she whispered. "Mommy will be right back." She wrapped Noah tightly in his blanket, kissed his forehead, and rushed into the cold night. The pawn shop was only 3 blocks away, but each step felt heavier than the last. Rain began to fall, soaking her hair and clothes. Still, she ran. When she reached the shop, the old owner looked at the ring carefully. "It's beautiful," he sighed softly. "Are you sure?" Emily nodded, unable to trust her voice. He counted out the money. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough for the medicine. Enough for a doctor's follow-up. Enough to save her son. Emily clutched the cash tightly and raced to the pharmacy. Minutes later, she was back home, kneeling beside Noah with the medicine. "It's okay now," she whispered as she helped him swallow it. Noah looked up at her with tired eyes. "Did you cry, Mom?" Emily smiled through her tears. "Just a little." He reached out and touched her hand. Then he noticed. "Your ring is gone." Emily froze for a moment. She didn't want him to worry. But Noah was always observant, just like his father. "I sold it," she said softly. "Why?" She took his tiny hand in hers. "Because nothing in this world is more important than you." Noah stared at her, his eyes filling with tears. "I'm sorry, Mom." Emily shook her head immediately. "Never say that. You are my world." That night, Emily barely slept. She sat beside Noah, watching his fever slowly break. By morning, his temperature had dropped. His breathing was steady. His cheeks had regained their color. Emily finally allowed herself to breathe. A week later, Noah was back to his usual self, drawing pictures at the kitchen table. "Mom," he called excitedly. Emily walked over. He handed her a crumpled piece of paper. It was a drawing of 3 people holding hands. Himself, Emily, and Daniel, with a bright halo above his head. On Emily's drawn hand was a large golden ring. Noah smiled. "Daddy says you still have it." Emily's breath caught. What do you mean? He told me in my dream. He said the ring was never really gold. Emily felt tears gathering again. Noah pointed to her heart. He said it's right there. Emily pulled Noah into her arms and held him tightly. Years passed. Noah grew into a kind, intelligent young man. He never forgot that night. He worked hard to earn scholarships and eventually became a doctor. On the day he graduated from medical school, Noah walked across the stage and accepted his diploma. Then, in front of hundreds of people, he stepped down and approached his mother. He knelt on one knee. The audience fell silent. Noah opened a small velvet box. Inside was a gold ring. Not identical to the original, but somehow even more beautiful. "Mom," Noah said, his voice shaking, "you sold your ring to save my life." Tears streamed down Emily's face. "Today, I want to give it back." He gently slid the ring onto her finger. "It can never replace Dad's ring," he continued. "But it represents the same thing." Emily whispered, "What's that?" Noah smiled through his tears. "Love that sacrifices everything." The entire auditorium rose to its feet in applause. Emily hugged her son tightly, unable to speak. À cet moment she realized she had never truly lost her ring, because the love it symbolized had lived on, in her sacrifices, in her son's life, in the man he had become. And sometimes, the greatest treasures are not the ones we wear on our fingers, but the ones we carry forever in our hearts.